In the quiet hills of Monroe County, Ohio, nestled near the town of Woodsfield, a mystery unfolded in 1961 that still lingers in whispers across old farmsteads and family stories. This is not a tale of ghosts or shadowy figures in the night. This is something far more unsettling. This is the real-life disappearance of a 76-year-old farm woman who, by all accounts, simply vanished in the middle of the day. No signs of a struggle, no known enemies, and no resolution more than 6 decades later. This is the story of Lula Briggs. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. Lula Briggs was 76 years old in 1961. A petite woman, just 5'2" and 95 pounds, she was known for her gold-rimmed glasses, gray eyes, and a resilience that had carried her through a hard life of farming. That strength was tested a few years earlier when she was attacked by an angry pig, an incident that left her with a limp and reliant on a makeshift cane. But she remained sharp and independent. She lived with her husband Lee Briggs, a 72-year-old farmer well known in Monroe County. The couple had been married about 12 years and resided 3.5 miles from Woodsfield along Ohio Route 26. They lived a simple country life, but on Halloween afternoon in 1961, everything changed. On that day, Lee said goodbye to Lula and left home around noon to help shuck corn at the nearby Hudson farm, which adjoined his own. At around 3 p.m., Lula had a phone conversation with a relative, Mrs. Henry McFadden, who would later recall that nothing seemed unusual and Lula was cooking supper. Finishing up at the Hudson farm, Lee returned home at about 4 p.m., but Lula wasn't there. Supper was on the stove, her apron was folded neatly on the kitchen counter, her purse was untouched. Yet she was gone. Just gone. Monroe County Sheriff Homer Antill quickly organized a search, bringing in nearly 200 volunteers to comb through the Briggs farm and surrounding countryside, concentrating on the rural farming areas of all the neighboring counties, as well as across the state line into West Virginia. With no evidence of forced entry, no signs of a struggle, and no clear trail to follow, the investigators turned to what few clues they had. 2 residents living 4 miles from the Briggs home reported they saw a 1959 blue and white Chevrolet station wagon they didn't recognize being driven by a man with another man and elderly woman in the back seat at about 3:30 p.m., roughly the time Lula would have gone missing. The driver stopped to ask directions to the river. They described the driver as 35 to 40 years old, square-shouldered with a ruddy complexion. They believed he looked about 5'9", weighed about 165 to 175 pounds, and he was wearing a cap. They did not get a clear look at the man in the back seat, but they did notice the elderly woman seated next to him. While she was hunched over and her face was not visible, they noticed that she was wearing a black scarf, a dark dress, and what looked like a man's overall jacket, much like Lula was known to wear. The car had out-of-state license plates, and there was a white stripe running lengthwise on the car. The car was last seen, headed in the direction of the Ohio River on State Route 556. The same car had been spotted earlier in the day, parked about 1,000 feet from the Briggs home. County commissioners posted a $1,000 reward for information. Lula's son, Homer Griffith, added an additional $500. The Bealsville Fire Department drained a pond on the farm, and William Bonner of the West Virginia State Penitentiary at Moundsville used a bloodhound in an effort to trace Lula's steps. Lie detector tests were given to Lula's husband, as well as to his son, Fred Briggs, Lula's son, Homer, her daughter, Lena Hudson, and Lena's husband, Raymond. The results of the tests led investigators to believe the family had no information concerning her disappearance. Homer returned home to Canton after chasing a lead that his mother may have been seen in the city. It was a dead end. Sheriff's deputies could only shake their heads. According to a Monroe County deputy, she just vanished into thin air. As the days turned into weeks and no trace of Lula was found, rumors began to swirl. Some whispered that Lee may have had something to do with it. There were even those who callously speculated he had fed Lula to the pigs. No motivation for why he would do this was ever mentioned. Others believed she'd been kidnapped, either for ransom or perhaps because someone believed she had money in the bank. Still others tied it to her son Homer, who had apparently made some money in the oil business. And then there's one final theory, that Lula, known to have suffered from a heart condition, had died in the station wagon during a failed kidnapping attempt, and her body was quietly disposed of somewhere no one thought to look. But there was no ransom demand, no confirmed sightings, and no body. In the fall of 1961, Monroe County was still very much a place where neighbors looked after one another, where trust ran deep, and where families had worked the same land for generations. But Lula Briggs's disappearance disrupted that quiet rhythm. It brought unease to the community, and in some ways it still haunts the area. The records of this case, like so many rural mysteries of the mid-20th century, were lost to time, and in this case, quite literally to a flood that destroyed much of the documentation. All that remains are the recollections of those who searched, the official accounts captured in newspaper archives, and the memory of a woman who deserved better than to simply vanish without a trace. Lula Briggs was more than a case file. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who worked the land and overcame hardship. And somewhere between her front door and the Ohio River, her story took a turn that no one has yet been able to explain. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, please leave them in the comments below. These forgotten pieces of our history deserve to be remembered, and together we can help preserve the truth, even if we can't solve the mystery. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.